Can you name the most family-friendly city in DFW?
Hello, I'm Doug Rogers.
This is Russell Rogers for the Rogers team from Keller Williams Southlake. Let's talk DFW real estate. All right, Doug, I got a quiz for you.
I didn't study.
Well, that's good.
It's a pop quiz?
It's a pop quiz.
All right, well.
Can you name, according to Open Door and their version of analytics, the most family-friendly city in DFW? The only Texas city to make the top 10.
By Open Door.
By Open Door.
Okay, well, I would go with Frisco.
That's incorrect.
Frisco, McKinney, Plano.
Nope.
Trophy Club.
Nope.
In this marketplace, that's usually the highest ranking that the other folks rank.
Yeah, you would think, right?
Yeah.
I thought maybe Flower Mound.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
You know, I believe they have 19 parks there.
Well, they have a linear park system that's 22 miles long, and it's a national award-winning park system.
Right.
So, yeah, I'd say they're family-friendly.
It's not Flower Mound either. It is, and this is nothing against the city, but it's the city of Watauga.
City of Watauga is the most family-friendly city.
It's the only Texas city to make the top 10 according to Open Door.
Watauga. Boy, I tell you, I was thinking about moving. I guess we're going to have to start selling homes in Watauga.
Yeah, and I bring this up because I think this is funny, and this is why you can't just Google things. Nothing against Watauga. You've flipped a house there. Mm-hmm. I own a rental property there. It's not where I put clients on purpose. It's an okay town. There's some parts of it that have Keller ISD schools.
Yeah, well, for the price point, it's a good location. I mean, it's a nice location, but you can't say nationally rank that it's the most family-friendly school because, I mean, school district, it's 50-50. It's half Birdville, half Keller.
Right.
It's what's it got going for it that's not Flower Mound or Frisco, McKinney, that all the national rankings you see with NAR and TAR.
They cited the Cap Smith Park, which is nice. You'll see it driving on 377. Yeah. And it is a nice park, but like Doug just mentioned, not a, 22 mile?
22 mile linear park.
Yeah. A Flower Mound or other locations. They named that the close location to other towns was part of it, which I think is kind of funny. Like, this town's the best because it's near this town, which is nice. And that was mainly it. They said, they have a public library. A lot of towns do. And just some other parks and some other stuff. So it's I just thought it was really funny that I actually had a client yesterday bring it up. He's new to town from Chicago, and he said, what about this Watauga place? And he's like, how do you pronounce that? I'm like, I saw that too. It's plenty nice, but it's not the most family-friendly in the DFW. And depending on your price point, it's not even my top pick. I'd rather live in North Richland Hills, to be honest.
Here's the point we all learned from. I just got back from the wine country, spent a couple of weeks in California, hit a few vineyards here and there. But for someone that's been there a dozen times, you learn the trick to not going to the top 5 on the internet, top 5 this, top 5 ranked by that, because those are actually rigged top 5s. There's several vineyards out there that one might even have a castle attached to it, and one might be this and that, and they're terrible. I mean, the wine there is actually undrinkable, in my opinion. And we're learning the same thing here in the real estate world as you go online and you see all these recommendations of places that you should give a try to or consider. But maybe it'd be better off talking to someone who sold houses there for 20 or 30 years, or someone who lives in the school district or knows that marketplace, and probably a better plan to get the on-the-ground feel for the marketplace rather than a top 5 listed by a company that's in the business of selling houses and may have some inventory there.
Yeah, that's what I wonder too. We talked a little bit about that, but I just do wonder if Open Door has more clientele in Watauga than they do in Frisco. And the price point of a house in Watauga is much lower, so it is interesting. And then to say it's I think it was number 8. It doesn't really matter. It's in the top 10. It was the only Texas town in the top 10. I just think it's just very strange.
If you were rating in the Metroplex, the top 10 places to live on a family-friendly basis, Watauga might not make the top 10 from a realistic perspective.
Yeah, I don't even think it's maybe in the top 10 of our cities. that we discuss, and we only discussed like 15. So
You got me there.
so
Hey, okay, I've got a question for you.
okay.
And I'm going to blame your generation. Is your generation about to impact the mortgage industry by creating a wave of bad credit?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this before we talked about this on the show, and with student loans coming due, was it Sunday? I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I have the information right here in my hot little hands. Now, this is coming from a reliable third party. I didn't make this up. But 25% of those surveyed, and over 1,000 students surveyed, 25% said they're just not going to pay their student loans back at all. They made the decision to not pay their student loans back. 23% more have decided they're going to postpone starting paying their student loans back. Only 35% of those students surveyed said they were definitely going to pay their student loans back. So what's going to happen to the 23% and the 25% that decide either not to or to delay? And in one case they're going to default, in the other they're going to have late dings on their credit reports. How are they going to be buying a house 2 or 3, 4 or 5 years from now if their credit score, which is probably sometimes challenging for a young person to go from 650 and 700 down to the low sixes or the high fives? Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to watch. We always talk about economic cycles being different each time. No two are exactly the same, even though we've gone through similar cycles over the years. You can read The Fourth Turning and those kind of books, but that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. But it's almost unpredictable, or it is unpredictable because of the government. We don't know what the government, with the election coming up, what impact. I mean, they could write it all off at some point anyway. So is it going to be impactful? What is the government going to do? What are the credit agencies going to do? Who's in whose pocket on that kind of thing? We don't really know.
Well, maybe we should short the stocks of the companies that are impacted by them not paying the loan back.
I mean, that's not a bad hedge, right? I always tell people when I get in discussions about this is it's kind of unfair to everybody, but it's actually probably good for us as multiple homeowners, because I think the inflation, well, to preface all this discussion, is if they write off the debt, and I'm not making any indication either way politically on yes if they should or shouldn't, I'm just saying if they do write it all off, I think my homes go up like 50% in value, like over a short time period, maybe it's 3 to 5 years. And so I'll probably make more than the people's student loans that are getting paid off.
Well, it releases a bunch of discretionary income.
Yeah, a tremendous amount.
It just depending on the type of person that has that debt. If they're not, the average student loan is somewhere around $350 to $400 a month. And you take that debt off their, they go and buy a car, they go on a vacation, or they start adding that $4,000 a year toward their down payment for a house, or they buy a bigger house. But right now, I think the impact that scares me the most is if they all damage their credit rating and there's no forgiveness in that process, then you're going to have a big chunk of that 25 to 35-year-old, demographic that has got a low credit score.
Yeah, and it may be something like we've seen before, the government or different scenarios in society, even when the decision is made or there is an urgent need, it still takes time. So there may be a time period where it could cause major issues, and then that's the final domino to fall for the government to then excuse those loans. But in that middle time period, how many people are going to be damaged?
Well, don't get caught holding the bag, because I have a feeling they're going to tell you everything's going to be fine. And you always have to be careful that the guy who told you that everything's going to be fine and we're going to forgive your school loans doesn't get reelected. And the party that takes their place says, we didn't say everything was going to be fine. We said you owe your school debt and you should pay it. So don't get caught holding the bag because someone told you, don't worry, don't pay us back.
Yeah, and I think the main thing there is we're not making any indication of what direction, but it is something to watch and to be concerned about. And I've talked to people about this on the investment property side. Is the biggest concern for me is home ownership for millennials down in age, because there are cultural differences. And if millennials and down don't want to buy homes, or in this case, they can't because of student loans or whatever, the bad credit or whatever, it does impact the value of those properties, not just in the short term, like some kind of economic recession, but in the long term. So,
yep. Well, that may create some opportunities coming up. Well, you want to talk about the inventory?
Yeah, why don't you run us through the numbers on that?
Okay, well, I took a look at the macro version this week as what's going on in the nation. And nationwide, there's about a 3.3 month supply of inventory. And the average sale for a house now in the United States, from a macro perspective, is 407,000, which is a nice new higher number. That's up 4% year over year. But what's interesting is the overall inventory is down 14% year over year, even though the price is up right at 4% year over year. Now, in our marketplaces, what's happening week by week, in the Grapevine, Colleyville, Keller, Southlake market, we added 43 listings in the last week. 23 went under contract in the last week. And totally, there's 319 houses listed in that marketplace, which is about 23 units higher than it was the week before. In the Alliance area, in the last week, they've added 53 listings. 28 listings in the last week went under contract. There's 409 listings total in that marketplace, and that's down only 5, which is kind of a small number. Flower Mound, Capel, Highland Village, in the last week, they've added 19 listings. 25 went under contract in the last week, and total listings there is 217. That's up about 14 from the week before. And Frisco, Plano, last week they've added 85 listings. 61 went under contract, and currently there's 672 active listings there. But if you want to kind of boil it down to compare it nationwide to our marketplaces, or what we call our key markets, we have a 1.7 month supply of inventory, where the nation has 3.3 months supply of inventory. So we're doing quite well so far as the inventory and how we're absorbing the inventory. It would be nice to have a little more inventory and see things balance out a little bit, but currently things are looking okay compared to the rest of the nation, but the rest of the nation is still struggling.
Because 3 months is a balanced market, correct?
Yep, it's leaning toward buyer's side, but
it's like near the equilibrium.
It's pretty balanced.
So still at about 1.5, give or take, we're still in a strange, weird seller's market in a technical sense.
That's correct. And what you're still going to find is the farther you go out to the edge of town, each time you go out a little farther away from DFW and get away from the center, things sell slower. No doubt. If you're on the edge of town versus the middle of town, things are selling slower.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that recently.
Well, I can tell you one exception. If you're in Watauga, things are like bowling up right now because that, it turns out, is the most family-friendly city in the United States.
Well, in Texas, but a top 10 in the United States.
Top 10, well, just correct. I'm sorry. Top 10 in the United States. So we're all moving to Watauga as soon as the show is over.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for my tenant to move out, and then I can just move in.
Just kick him out to the curb, and because they're very family-friendly there, someone will take him in.
That's true. So there you go. I did want to talk about interest rates real quick. So according to the Mortgage Daily News, the national average right now, as of, I think, close of market today is when they do it, is 7.44%. So it's down 3 basis points from 7.47, but it was as high as 7.6 during the week, which I think was like a 30-year high from what I saw. Now, this is the national average. Again, we talk about this a lot. It doesn't mean that's what you'll get. It's based on your discussion with the lender, but at least we didn't keep going up from that 7.6, and we'll see what happens as we go forward. And I did see an interesting TikTok. It was a lady who's kind of a well-known realtor on TikTok. She's got 60,000 followers, which I think is pretty high given the nicheness of the industry and everything. But she was kind of talking about how she didn't understand how they didn't raise rates and rates continue to go up. And I think that goes back to our discussion last week when I was talking about how Powell was very, in our opinion, or in my opinion, very hawkish, even though he didn't raise. He still, kind of said, we're going to stay the course and we're going to continue to look at inflation, which had actually increased, the rate of change. So that was kind of the answer there. So for the TikTok people out there, that's likely the reason why, although we can't pinpoint it, but that's how that works. So just because they don't raise doesn't mean we don't see mortgage rates continue to rise. Now, hopefully we won't. There's a lot of other moving pieces. I'll point you to the discussion with Craig Rhodes in episode 5, I believe, for that information. So go watch that. But that's our update on interest rates.
No, the bond market is always smarter than the rest of the market. They got it right. They're heading up.
Yeah, which means they're estimating they're going to continue to raise.
That's correct. They see the inflation being what it really is versus inflation being what CNBC and Fox News tells you that it might be.
Yeah, and then also the short end is indicating of that because that's where the Fed raises occur, where the long end is changing because of the outlook on the economy and the strength of the economy. So you kind of have to watch both as we move forward here. But as we come to a head with some of the economic challenges with the government shutdown occurring in 2 days and student loans occurring in 2 days, we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe. Drop us some questions and comments. We'd love to see them. And thanks for joining us.